I'm going to introduce Jeremy Paden. Jeremy Paden is an Affrilachian poet and an associate professor of Spanish at Transylvania University. He is the author of chapbooks of poems, Broken Tulips, Accents Press 2013, and
Ruina, montium.
thank you, Broadstone Press at 2016. His essays, poems, and translations have appeared in various journals, books, and anthologies. So, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you to y'all for staying, sitting through the long slog of all the readings.
It's been fascinating.
I thought, from 12 to 18 lived in the Dominican Republic. And so I thought I would start not with a Dominican poem, but a lovely poet from Jamaica by the name of K. Miller. And he has a poem in his collection called There Is an Anger That Moves, that's called Speaking in Tongues. And so I thought I would start with this as a homage to poems from the Caribbean, Speaking in Tongues. This poem begins in 1987. My grandmother dragged us to meet the Lord under a tent in St. Catherine. From here I trace the heritage of standing spellbound as women worship. Always I am on the outskirts. I remember my grandmother unbecoming the kind of woman who sets her table each Sunday, who walks up from the river, water balanced easily on her head. My grandmother became instead all earthquake, tilt and twirl and spin, her orchid purple skirt blossoming. She became grunt and rumble, sounds you can only make when your shoes have fallen off and you're on the ground crying Rabba and Yashundai, Robose, and ba 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 ba. Years later, a friend tells me, tongues is nothing but gibberish. The deluded pulling words out of dust. I want to ask him, what is language but a sound we christen? I would invite him to a tent where women are tearing their stockings, are on the ground pulling up fresh words to offer as doves to Jehovah. I would ask if he sees no meaning here, and if he never had the urge to grunt an entirely new sound. The poem always would like to do this, always wants to break from its lines and let a strange language rise up. Each poem is waiting on its own day of Pentecost to thrash, to robose, to yashundai, and the poem will not care that some walk past, afraid of the words we try out on our tongues, hoping this finally is the language of God, that he might hear it and respond. So, what I thought I will principally read from is this collection, Ruina Montium. In 2010, there was a mining collapse that happened in Copiapó, Chile, and 33 miners were trapped below for several months. It happened in August. It wasn't until November that they were brought out, but they all survived. And it was, and I'll read first that poem, which at other times I haven't been able to read it and not cry, but we'll see. It was the poem, a colleague of mine with whom I write had told me, oh, you need to write about this, you need to write about this. And I said, no, I have no desire to go chasing ambulances. I'm not going to write about this. But this moment is the one, and watching this moment happen live over the internet is the one that gave me the permission to go ahead, and it said, no, you need to write about it. It's called Fathers and Sons, and it's for Paden Avalos. Paden Avalos is, at this time, he was a young 12-year-old boy. He was the son of the foreman and this is, he was allowed to stand within the circle and was the first to go and greet his father when his father was finally brought up. Fathers and sons. Byron, it's fine, cry. Let all that fear, that love, push up at last through the hardened strata, the dry, baked earth of your small heart. I, too, have desired my father just as much, stood waiting for his approval, unsure if my tears were joy, fear, shame. Byron, cry. San Jose has been weeping rock and clay for 100 years or more, since miners began their slow spiral into Earth's crust. I know now, grown man that I am, he too cried, lying prostrate on that fire-tempered rock, thinking of you, your mother, your siblings. Byron, he did not abandon you. Let salt and water wash away the dust. The first poem is called The Heroine, both in terms of a harrowing experience, but also in terms of the idea of the harrowing of hell, the descent of Christ into hell, and his coming back up during those days in the tomb. And it thinks about this experience, which itself is an experience of resurrection, as those both as a terrifying experience that they underwent, but then also as a form of rebirth. The Heroine. Peel off the layers until naked in this unholy darkness of rock dust. Peel, scrape away, epidermis, dermis, down through tissue matter to nothing but this mineral darkness. Descend further into gray matter, to secret springs, erratic veins of metal, desire, resolve that scintillate in the dark, and down to chambers damp and hidden, where the daughter of the goddess of life makes fungus bloom and life still beats. And isn't it this sip of water, crumb of bread broken, can of tuna shared beyond sharing, that will lift you up from the rock, the sepulchre, where body broken was body buried and body raised? And in fact, the miners, there was a small stash of food, and between when the collapse first happened and contact was established, they kept themselves alive on this, but there were only a handful of tuna cans, and so they would take 1 teaspoon of tuna and put it in a jug of water, and that was their daily soup, and the only amount of protein that they had for the first several weeks was just that teaspoon of tuna. The title of the collection, ruina montium, is a Latin phrase. It comes from Pliny the Elder, who in his Natural History writes about Roman mining in the northern part of Spain, in a shire called El Bierzo. And they had these, they built aqueducts that would take the water up to the top, and then they would dig holes in and through, honeycombing through the mountains, and wash the mountains away, to then do placer mining for the gold that was in the mountains. And you can see this place called Las Médulas in Spain. They're just the shadows of mountains are left. So the title poem comes from that, because the Spanish that came over to Chile came with 1,500 years of mining knowledge with them, and they came to Chile to mine. Ruina montium. It's a short poem. 2,000 years since Rome minced the hills of Bierzo, cleaved them with cataracts, shaved them down, muscle from bone, bone fleck from bone shaft to marrow. How dangerous we have made this earth. One of the men, Jose Enriquez Gonzalez, was an evangelical preacher, and they referred to him as El Pastor. And so on the weekends he would preach, during the week he mined. And knowing that about him, and knowing also that he, like a number of these other miners, grew up mining. He started as a young boy, going down with his father, and this was not the first collapse that he himself had survived. In fact, he had survived another one with his father and his brothers. And so I took that story and put it together with this idea of him being an evangelical preacher to write this short little poem in his honor called The Taken and the Left. It was like in the days of Noah, only men were mining and not mining, resting and working. 1 minute quiet, then dust of end times roared down. Some were taken, others left, bodies cleaved, the terrible harvest, sudden as rapture. Fathers left childless, children fatherless, wives widowed. But we were the virgins many, ready and running from the tunnels, unashamed at our nakedness. The bridegroom was calling, those that turned back, crushed by rock. God never stops winnowing, even now from the pit, he calls us to his side. Another of the poets was referred to as el poeta, the poet, because once this communication was established, he would send a love poem up to his wife every day in the communications. And he, along with a number of other, 4 or 5 others, either learned that his wife was pregnant or had a child born. He, in fact, went down not knowing that his wife was pregnant, learned of her pregnancy in 5 minutes. So this one is for Victor Zamora Bugueño, and it's called Enunciation. Did you, in those first days, write poems, or did despair strip you and hunger sap from your tongue and pen all language? Did you dream of her coming to you, lying with you as wife as she did that night before you descended into trembling tunnels? Did she, in those visions, offer you your heart's desire, let you assay her body for cobalt and bismuth? Did you give yourself to her with equal abandon? Open that tangled knot of shame, covered in silence, stored in the back cave of every man's heart? Did she appear to you, dressed radiant as Gabriel, announcing? And I will read, let's see, one more to finish up. Baptismal waters. The world turned to Copiapó and watched, but there were a number of other collapses throughout Latin America that happened while people were paying attention to this one that nobody spoke about. Around this time, right, there was also the Massey collapse, and there were a number of things happening in Appalachian mining. So this is, having that in mind, there's this, and that'll be the last one I read. Baptismal waters. What will you make of this salvation? Remember now those miners, Venezolanos, who died while the world watched your rescue. Their clandestine digging into hills for gold, how different is it than your century-long descent? Remember now the 70 Colombianos consumed by fire, covered in coal dust, smoldering like Gehenna, trash heap of corpses, noxious stench, and you, thankful this is copper and gold, not coal. Here, your second life, the woman who has cooked your meals, borne your children, made your bed these 25 years, take her to a priest. Make your life a sacrament. Kiss your wife large with child. Hold mistress, mother, newborn. Dance, whiskers on the soft skin of their necks. Whisper your love. In front of cameras rolling, take your son to the ocean's edge. Strip naked, then dive and swim about in those frigid waters. Thank you.
Any questions?
No, I was just going to say, I love the poem about the wife witnessing
Yeah.
the minor with the mistress.
Well, and thank you. Virginia's read the collection.
It's wonderful. The rhythm, the flow, it's just musical. It's really nice.
Well, thank you.
And that one has mixed emotions in it, a little humor.
Right.
A little
Yeah.
humor.
Well, I mean, right, I mean, so 33, there are 33 men. There are a lot of different stories and a lot of different domestic stories involved there as well. And, yeah.
It's full of stuff. Yeah. Good, thank you.
How long did you work on that collection?
In terms of reading and research, I mean, I sort of obsessively read everything and watched all the TV shows that I could. I mean, the internet's a wonderful thing in that way. That I could for about 6 to 8 months, and wrote the initial drafts during that time period as well, and then worked on them on and off, polishing them up for a couple of years. I mean, so this came out in 2016, but pretty much by 2012 or so, they were done. I was just looking for a home, and very pleased that it was picked up by a Kentucky press that does poetry, Broadstone, because it felt right that a mining state would publish about another mining state. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.